Purificación Gallardo never met her grandfather, but she wants the world to know he was a victim of dictator Francisco Franco. Her parents are now in their 90s.
Hello. Mom, Dad, how are you?
This flat in the Madrid suburbs is full of family photos, but one face is missing from most of them.
Do you remember how old Granddad was when the war began?
43.
Felipe was just 12 years old when Franco's troops jailed and then executed his father. Today there are 114,000 victims like him still to be exhumated.
What happened was really sad. My dad was really intelligent, a fountain of scientific knowledge. He knew so much.
The first thing we need to do is find his body and to ensure that the truth is known, that there is justice and reparations. Recovering the body is a little late, but getting justice is very important.
With no state help, Purificación managed to track down her grandfather's remains, but she says local politicians aren't helping her exhume the body.
The councillor told me that my grandfather is in plot 4, which is right here. But when I mentioned the word exhume and trying to transfer his remains from Badajoz to Valdetores, where my grandmother is, everything changed.
A new law passed by the Socialist left-wing coalition has given fresh hope to families like Purificaciones. For the first time, the state is responsible for finding and identifying thousands of people reported missing. In Valladolid, in the middle of the thousands of tombs at the El Carmen cemetery, lies one of the largest mass graves found in Spain.
Buenos días. ¿Cómo va eso, Angélica?
Bien, estoy sacando la mano del individuo 10.
Julio is an archaeologist from a victims association overseeing exhumations here. His team has recovered the remains of 250 victims of Franco.
These people are lined up, one against the other, which shows they were people buried after the summary trials took place.
The Spanish government has allocated 60,000 euros to tracking down those victims. Before the new law, Julio had to mainly rely on volunteers to carry out this work. The state funds have allowed him to employ professionals like Angelica.
These people were buried here a long time ago and only their family members remember them. By recovering them, at least you show people what happened in our recent history.
Socialist Pedro Sanchez came to visit these excavations in October, the first time a prime minister has witnessed this process. A symbolic moment, however late, for the victims of Franco.
We're grateful that the government noticed the work our association has been doing in Valladolid over the last 20 years.
But there's no consensus in modern Spain over this new democratic memory law, passed in the Senate by 128 votes for, 113 against. 47 years after Franco's death, those on the right of the political spectrum say the law is reopening old wounds. Spain never put any of those responsible for the dictatorship on trial. Its transition to democracy was based on an amnesty law. Rafael helped write it.
This photo with King Juan Carlos was taken a little before the amnesty law. This new law delegitimizes our transition to democracy by perceiving that throughout that whole period there was an inadequate and imperfect democracy, directed and executed by people who weren't democrats.
And not all descendants of victims are hopeful about the new law. Emilio is the grandson of a Republican activist who was executed. Standing by the Victory Archway, a monument erected to the glory of Francoism, he says he's pessimistic the law will change things.
A law passed in 2007 makes this archway illegal, but 15 years later it's never been applied. Now we've got another law. I've got no reason to think that it's going to change anything.
The latest legislation creates a commission to investigate human rights violations committed until the start of the 1980s. That won't end the impunity for those who carried out atrocities, says Emilio.
The law that's been passed won't put anyone on trial. It's not going to tell us who the dictator's executioners were. They want to do a census of the victims, but they don't want to do a census of the henchmen, and they're not going to offer reparations to the victims. So what kind of justice is that?
This latest attempt to come to terms with Spain's painful past is vulnerable. The country's opposition has already announced it will repeal the new law if it wins power next year.